This July, Family Fest Barbados invites you to be part of something powerful. It is our month of activities in July 2026 under the theme, The Purpose of Family. Across 4 dynamic weeks, we will focus on the heart of our nation, men, women, children, and the family. Join us for 12 live online discussions, exploring real issues, real stories, and real solutions for stronger families and a stronger Barbados. Men's Week runs July 5th to 9th. Women's Week runs July 12th to 16th. Children's Week runs July 19th to 23rd. And Family Week runs July 26th to 30th. Stream with us live on Sundays at 5:30 p.m. and Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Then join us for our 7th anniversary fundraising gala. Saturday, September 5th, 2026, at 7 p.m. at the Hilton Barbados Resort. Enjoy a 3-course meal, entertainment, door prizes, and more. Tickets are $250 per person. Your support helps us to save families. Family Fest Barbados. Help, hope, healing, happiness. Then join us for our 7th anniversary fundraising gala. Saturday, September 5th, 2026, at 7 p.m. at the Hilton Barbados Resort. Enjoy a 3-course meal, entertainment, door prizes, and more. Tickets are $250 per.
We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness. With God on our side, we're marching strong, looking out for hurting children all around, and helping the parents carry on. Standing united, we'll overcome. We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness.
Good evening, everyone, and I want to welcome you to Family Fest 2026, and we are presenting this evening Discovering Manhood, Role versus Purpose. I am Bishop Mark S. Hayward, and I will be with you along with 2 very distinguished guests. I have with me here this evening Reverend Adolph Davis and Mr. Marlon Charles. Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to our program.
Pleasant good evening, Bishop Mark.
Wonderful. It is where is that Mr. Charles? That is you. The last time I saw you, sir, you were not as that distinguished look. I know you always look distinguished, but that matured look now that you have, I might have passed you on the road.
I'm trying to get into the caliber of men like you.
Well, gentlemen, I think what you should do is to give each our audience a little introduction of yourselves. Who you are, where your church, what you're doing, and then we get right into our Rediscovering Manhood, Role versus Purpose. Adolphus, Rev, you can go first. Adolphus Davis.
No problem. Greetings and blessings to all. It's a joy to be sharing on this occasion as we really invest in developing family and strengthening family. So I am Adolph Davis. I'm Superintendent Minister at the Methodist Church Tobago Circuit. I'm in Tobago, but I'm from St. Vincent. The circuit in Tobago, we have 10 congregations in Tobago, and I am married to my wonderful, beautiful, and darling wife, Michelle. We have 2 children, Aliana the older of the two at 16, and Aniela, the younger, at 11. So they keep us very active and busy, and we thank God for them. My parents, Noble and Ela Davis, they have been significant in shaping me into who I am today by the grace of God.
Okay. Marlon of the Charles?
Not sure where all the titles coming from, but if you look at my birth certificate, it would say Marlon, Adrian, Charles. I'm happy to be here. Thanks again to the Family Fest Barbados family for the invitation. For most of you who would have known me, I would have served before, and I serve as a chaplain. I work at the Government Industrial School, serving there, also at the Barbados Stars Prison. And also, I serve as a crisis response manager dealing with critical incident stress management cases for various organizations. I'm also a facilitator with the John Maxwell team, the Beyond Success program within the Caribbean. I'm also working with the Global Leadership Network as the country coordinator for the Caribbean with the Global Leadership Summit, for some of you who would have attended that event and been a part of it. All in all, God's humble servant, and my passion and purpose is to really empower and to help leaders develop themselves to be the best version of themselves, to live their God-given potential on this earth while they live, while they have breath in their lungs. And my challenge as I interact and meet people every day is to really propel them and to challenge them to live their eulogy. I do believe there are two great days in the lives of individuals, and that's the day they were born, and the second is the day they discovered why they were born. So it's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to a healthy discussion with my brothers here.
Wonderful. Well, gentlemen, it's good to have you on board with us. As families continue to face growing social and economic pressures, this discussion this evening will explore the role versus the purpose of the man in the family. It will examine the distinction between role and purpose in the home and consider the consequences when these are unclear, poorly defined, or confused. Our goal this evening really in this discussion is to help men gain clarity about the difference between their role versus their purpose so that they can approach family life in a fresh, meaningful, and intentional way. In our conversation this evening, we hope that it can help men to better understand and appreciate that distinction. And it will also empower them to function accordingly. The discussion will be, I am hoping and believing, will be a resounding success. Now, to explore and clarify the distinction between a man's role and a man's purpose within the family, helping men develop a deeper understanding of both concepts so that we can engage in family life with greater intentionality, responsibility, and meaning. I would want to start off this evening, gentlemen, with this question for clarity for the men. What is the difference between role and purpose?
If I could jump there, I think one of the things is purpose, I think, points to, in a sense, destination on the one hand, and purpose also points to origin. So, in a sense, something is created for a purpose. It's about origin, but purpose is also destination, what it is created to accomplish. And the role, I think, relates to what is to be done towards fulfilling and accomplishing that purpose. So I think that would be, for me, one of the ways to look at the difference. And then I'll say something further after my brother shared.
All right, Brother Marlon.
Okay, I would kind of make a statement. A role is something basically that you do, and a purpose is who you are becoming. So I know you, Bishop Mark, the voice on radio. I know you in terms of Love and Light Ministry and the role you have there, which is the bishop. That's a role. But then the
Yeah.
purpose of what you do there as a shepherd, or if we hear you in Life 97.5, we hear you
Yes.
in the position there as an announcer. And I think there, if we outline the context, I guess we could now put some meat on. For me, my perspective, it may not be a versus, but when we put the lens to which we look at men, is how there is clarity in us understanding our role and understanding our purpose.
Mhm. Okay, so I think basically what I'm hearing you both say is that the role really is more external, positional, like you talked about the bishop, right? Where a purpose now is more internal or something that can bring about transformation and it's existential. So um, what does the relationship though between the role and purpose look like in real life? Because we are establishing that the difference is one is more of an external, transactional, positional thing, whilst the purpose now is internal. That is the person, a unique, I would say, where a person is able to use their giftings and have an impact on those that they might lead or they might be able to influence. So what does the relationship between now that we get a little understanding, if you want to speak a little further on that, between the role and the purpose, what does it really look like in real life?
If I may, again, outlining a role is something you do, and then the purpose is something of more or less who you're becoming. I think if you put the spotlight in it, I want to use one word, identity. I think when identity is clear, the role could be identified and there's an understanding of the role, and then the person or what you are becoming, because you have an identity, there's an activity related to the identity of what you do, the person you are becoming. And I think identity to me is a big word as we jump into this discussion.
Mhm. Okay, Reverend Adolphus.
Well, as I would have shared, I locate role and purpose, and purpose is always something that provokes questions of meaning, of intent, of purpose is in some ways aspirational. So that's where I am thinking in terms of purpose. So purpose is big picture, and role is what you do within the context of accomplishing that big picture. And so I think when I looked at the question of role and purpose of the man in the family, there are two ways in which that came at me. One of them was uh, we can think of the role in terms of purpose first, because remember, I'm thinking of purpose as big picture, purpose as a framework in which role takes place. And so when I looked at the role of man in family, I was asking myself, should we locate purpose in terms of the man, or should we locate purpose in terms of the family? Meaning,
Mhm.
what is the big picture? And so if purpose is family, what is his role towards that? And if purpose is family, I'm asking myself, so what is the purpose not just of the man, but purpose of the family, which the man is a part of? And how do we understand the man as contributing? What is his role in fulfilling the purpose of family? And when I think of purpose, this is what really takes me back to God and faith, because I'm thinking, why did God create the man? And why did God create the family? Those are the questions that for me are critical, going back to my brother sharing, to the question of identity. Because
Right.
if you understand why you exist and for what you exist, that's why I say it's also aspirational. It defines your understanding of who you are. So that is in a way where I'm kind of locating some of my thoughts.
Right. All right. So I can, thinking of what you were exposing there is that purpose really utilizes the role. In other words, the
Mhm.
role is the vehicle to purpose, right?
Yes.
In other words, um, you have a role, like for example, a father, but
Hmm.
no, the purpose is how well
Hmm.
you do in seeking to fulfill that purpose.
Hmm.
Is that where we are now? In terms of
I,
answering that question,
Yeah.
the
I
difference between the
concur.
two. Yes, please. Right.
Yes, yes, that's how I understand the part as we
Mhm.
pass it out and work it through. That's the direction I'm understanding it as well.
Right.
Yeah, same,
Okay.
same, Mark. I do believe it was nicely shared by my brother Davis here in terms of
Mhm.
how both there must be a role in understanding the role, of how that now portrays in the purpose,
Mhm.
right? And in doing
Right.
that, in terms of my language, the lens I look at it, I see when you kind of put the two, you can't have one without the other. It
Right.
now where clearly there's the identity of the individual. Because my conversation in terms of what's song track is playing in my head is one where I'm constantly looking at what's going on in Barbados in
Mhm.
particular. If we could kind of, polarize the conversation to a context that I could speak to. And there's a disconnect where there's an understanding of the role of man, all right, and how man should fulfill his purpose.
Mhm.
So it's a very, very interesting conversation. And if I have to say anything, I do believe there is need for a reset,
Mhm.
because I believe culture would have drifted away from
Mm.
what God's context of role of man
Mhm.
and purpose of man. And I think there we need to really kind of zero in on what needs to be done in society.
Right.
Well,
Reverend Adolphus, anything
yes,
additional?
there are two things. One, I'm thinking, for example, of football. We are now in World Cup season. You
Yes,
know,
please.
I may be a defender, I may be a striker. That may be my role. But if I don't understand what my purpose is, I'll be a defender and a striker, and really, we would not, as a team, be able to accomplish anything because I may be a striker, but I may not be striking, scoring goals. I may not be contributing to the team really winning because
Mhm.
I have a role, but I don't understand the purpose for which that role was assigned.
Yeah.
I think, if our men don't understand the role, the purpose for which the role was assigned, in other words, what is this role working towards?
Right.
We really would have a crisis. So, I've heard people, okay, let's use an example. You spoke of a father. A man may say,
Mhm.
well, as far as I understand, my role is to lead. But if you don't
Yes.
understand what you are leading towards, if there's no
Correct.
purpose that what
Mhm.
that you there's a
Right.
reason for that and a reason to be accomplished in that. If that is missing, you have a
Mhm.
real dysfunctional. Imagine a football team where everybody has a role, but they don't know what their purpose is. The
Right.
defender, and so eventually you might have the striker striking in the other person's goal because he's a
Position.
striker. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter which goal you're striking, you're a striker.
Yeah.
It is your
Right.
purpose that allows you to figure out which goal to strike to, where
Mhm.
to score and where to defend. So
Yeah.
I think it's critical. And if I could also just add another layer to that, the question about the role and purpose of the man, and is also a question that implies there is a uniqueness to his role, so that there's something that the man,
Brings to the
male
table.
man, there's a role for the male man. Because if you're asking about the role and purpose of the man, it means that there's a suggestion of a uniqueness that he has to fulfill. Otherwise, there's no conversation about role and purpose. For example, if we are saying what is the role and purpose of humanity, then there's not necessarily a uniqueness in male or female in that question. But when we
Mhm.
ask the role and purpose of the man, we're assuming that he has a specific role to play that is different from the woman.
Yeah, that's interesting. And now as you were talking there about the man and his purpose and fulfilling his using his role to fulfill his purpose, because
Mhm,
for example, a man could be paying the bills, supporting his family, doing all these things. So his roles are being fulfilled, but then he's not
mhm,
available to his children. He's not there to lead,
mhm,
not boss, but lead his wife. He's not there to teach his children, or to discipline his children, because we
mhm,
find in society now where men are missing, we find that the children, because the man was not fulfilling his purpose to train, to raise resilient and curious children, and to explain to them their roles, and also set an example. His purpose too is to live the kind of life that was set an example for them. So purpose, I think we can put that one in a capsule and say that purpose defines how you execute the role. Could we I don't know if you all want to expound on that a little more, but I think for what I'm hearing, purpose defines how you, the man,
mhm.
execute your role.
Correct. I definitely agree with that. And Rev, you couldn't have said it better in terms of how he shared it. I love the analogy using a football team where everyone knows
Yeah.
it. And one thing I would interject too, in terms of if we have to zero into it, I do believe we also have to bring it back to our Creator.
Mhm.
And we were created in God's image and in his likeness. And we were created by him. He's the creator, and he created us like him to be creative. It is within man the ability to produce or with the connection to a woman, right? Reproduction is now happening. So the seed comes from the man. I do believe there is so much that there needs to be in terms of the education of our role. So at the end point, when a child comes out, the purpose of reproduction, producing after our own kind, that we can see the purpose of it. And I think those are some of the even smaller things that's needed, because when we look at the whole context of fatherlessness or
Mhm.
dysfunctional family, there
Mhm.
is a gap there. And it's
Yeah.
because there is a lack of a definition or explanation or even the culture of us now nurturing those who we bring into this world so they understand role and they understand purpose.
You know,
Okay, wonderful. Yes, yes, sir.
in your question, you made reference to the man financing and
Right. Taking care of
providing
all the
for.
things. Yeah. Mhm.
And that is why this question is critical, purpose and goal, because I think that's part of the problem. And remember, purpose is really the raison d'être, the reason for, the undergirding of what is all of this for, why was it established, and therefore for what has it been established? So why is the man financing? Why is the man working and providing for? I don't know that a lot of our men sufficiently understand the why. They understand the what. Well, let me not say they understand, but some get the what. Well, I have to provide, I have to work hard, I have to, but they don't necessarily get the why. And so you have this frustration because if your what isn't going somewhere, if your what doesn't have a clarity of destination, then the what becomes the end all, as you pointed out. So, in other words, the fact that I am mining and taking care of my children, that's the end of it. And so, when things are not going in a particular direction, I'm frustrated because I think I have accomplished my purpose when the purpose is not financing the family. That's a role you're playing towards something bigger. And
Yeah.
so, sorry, the question of God is fundamental to the identity, to the understanding of the question, because purpose doesn't originate in us. Purpose is bigger than us. Why did
Mhm.
God create male
Yeah.
man? God
That's
create
right.
us muscular, different with the seed. What is God seeking to achieve and accomplish? Why did God create us incomplete to be completed in one sense with a woman, a spouse? What is God's purpose behind all of that? So that when the man understands that there is something bigger than just getting a job and making sure you build a house and you put the women in a house and you get education for your children, but that there's something bigger in this. If our men don't understand that, and that is something, in my view, the purpose is unchanging because it
Mhm.
is divinely ascribed and defined. It is God who has decided what the role, what the purpose, we'll get to the role of man is, what he hopes for us and expects for us to accomplish, and why he designed us to accomplish that. If that isn't clear, then we have a problem. And I'm not sure our men have a clear sense of, so why did God make me man? Does God intend to be accomplished in and through me as a man? And I think that's the question, because if you don't get that question right, it ain't matter what role you perform. The
Right.
roles are not going to be consequential, impactful, transformative, meaningful, because they are purposeless role and they are end rather than a means to an end.
Right. So then what I'm hearing you saying then is that the man who does not understand his original purpose. In other words,
Correct.
what God has created him for, right? Then we start with a problem there. Maybe that is why we also have confusion now with him, because in our society now, a lot of people do not necessarily, I remember even with our parents, they would not necessarily go to church, but they felt and had some kind of inclination, and maybe some people speaking to them, they had this whole thing of the importance of knowing God, the importance of actually being exposed to God. And so when we came up, we would appreciate a life because a life we recognized was important to God. What are the consequences though? Because we could break down these two questions and we could speak about them for the whole night, but we don't have all that time. But what are the consequences when now there's confusion between role and purpose? Could we talk about that a little bit?
Can I steal your analogy? I think our brother did it well using his FIFA World Cup happening right now. And he
Right.
shared in terms of if a striker doesn't know his role, the same for a defender. And if it's unclear, there'll be total confusion happening out in that field. And I do believe in society right now, we have not just a bout of it, I think it's a pandemic level in terms of the understanding, not just of men, but even of women, because there's so much when we get into family life issues, there is quite a bit of uncertainty. There's
Yes.
definitely no real clarity as to what are the roles and the purpose of man. And I think that's where we need to tighten it up. But then who's to really say, who's to touch it, who's to deal with it? And why did we get here? How did we get here? So some things I'm throwing outside there too. Rev?
Well, I think you're right. And you spoke about, I think our brother alluded to the crisis, crime, and other issues affecting Barbados and the region. Because what happens is if you are a defender and you don't know your role, you would be kicking down your own player and kicking down a player. So
Yes.
you're hurting your team rather than
Yes.
helping your team. Imagine a defender marking his own striker. You have confusion and and the team can't progress. You can't achieve anything substantial. And in fact, if you don't understand your role, your purpose, even though you're a defender, your purpose is going to define even how you tackle. Because if you know, just as far as I'm concerned, I'm a defender, and you go and kick down a man and get a red card, you have now compromised the team's potential for success because they're playing with 10 men instead of 11. And if another person does the same foolishness, sooner or later, your team is tremendously hampered and affected because these fellas don't understand, hey, it's bigger than you, and it's bigger than just you striking a ball or you defending. You're part of a bigger thing. And I think you're right, Brother Haywood, because even though some of our parents were not as in church, there was
Right.
always a sense that I am around for something bigger than myself, that
Yes.
I exist for something bigger than me, that there is something bigger than me that defines who I am and what I'm supposed to be about. And when you don't have that sense of clarity, it really creates a crisis in our men because you then feel even more frustrated. You get angry because remember, if you feel that, look, I am working hard and bringing home the money, and that doesn't seem to be going anywhere, you get frustrated. You feel
Yes.
that you feel your life is purposeless. You feel that you're wasting your time. You start to resent work. You start to resent the wife. You start to resent everybody, and you become so discontented that discontent manifests itself sometimes violently, sometimes with alcoholism and withdrawal, because
Yes.
frankly speaking, you don't know what you're doing all of this for. And I've heard fellas say, I don't know what I'm doing it all of this for. Why?
Why?
Purpose question. Why do I need to be faithful to one woman? Why? Because there's no sense of purpose. Why? What is the problem? Why can't I have 10 children? Because I'm a man. Because again, they don't have a sense of purpose. And one of the things I would sometimes say to men, fatherhood is not a part-time job. And if you have to be you have to have a child day and a child day and a child day and a child day. You can't be a full-time father, and fatherhood is full-time. But that kind of thinking relates to purpose. How do you understand what you're in this for? And it's bigger than us, it's bigger than you, bigger than me. Why did God create me the way he did? That's purpose question. And what does God intend for me to accomplish? That's purpose question. And our men need to begin to appreciate bigger that it's not just about how I can mind my family. What am I seeking to accomplish? In other words, what does God want me to mind my family for? And what do I want to accomplish when I mind my family? Just for my children to get an education and get a good work? Isn't there something bigger that I'm working towards? And that I'm not sure our men have figured out.
Right. Anything to add there, Brother Marlon?
No, I agree. I don't think there's
Yeah,
clarity
yeah,
for men.
that's a good
There's so
right.
much things that's happening in society. There's so much thing
Uh-huh.
fighting for the attention. There's the preview of what we look at on what entertainment or television or music that they listen to. There's so
Mhm.
much dynamics in terms of what our role and our purpose is. So it depends on
Mhm.
who you speak to. They will bring a perspective of what the role of a man should be, what the
Mhm.
purpose of a man should be. But I think if we're going to put it in the context of what God's design, I think that's where we would have to initiate our conversation because there's so much variables when you talk about it. So for someone, they would say, but this is the purpose of a man. I mean, if I go and let's go in one of the blocks in the prison and let's initiate a conversation about the role of a man.
Mhm.
And I would tell you more than 99.9% of those men inside that quad would have a very negative perspective because of their upbringing or the
Mhm.
perspective of how they saw a man presented in their life. So their role and the perspective of the purpose would be different. And I think this is where we have had a serious culture drift that the understanding for a normal man, and we take it out of a faith-based context and just look at society, and it
Mhm.
has become one of a warped one. So roles have changed. It's variable depending on who you speak to. But if we're going to take the conversation somewhere or bring it to a point here this evening, I think we also have to look at what context we want to drive this to, because I do believe the big thing here is us understanding the creator.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And
Wonderful. Mhm.
if we have to use the context of a map and a compass,
Mhm.
we as people of faith who trust in God, we are the compass in this world,
Mhm.
because a compass will always point you to the true north. It doesn't matter where you go, it always gives you the true north. The world we live in is like a map. It's constantly evolving, and there's a new road, there is a new development being built,
Mhm.
and you have to keep updating it. We have so many perspectives by different countries of the role of a man. We see so much different things happening. So there's so much dynamic things, but where are we standing? And that's the conversation I would say to men. Where are you? What's your foundation? And what drives you for you to totally understand the perspective of the lens of a
Mhm. Mhm.
role and a purpose?
You know,
Wonderful. Go ahead.
and
Go ahead, Rev.
brother, yeah, I think it's this is so interesting because if we do not ground it in God, uh,
Correct.
who determined our purpose,
Blueprint.
you have a real crisis. So, for example, a man will think his role is to breastfeed, literally speaking, and he may
Mhm.
try to figure out how to attach the child to the breast and to provide milk and produce milk. But you're trying to perform a role that you were not created to perform, so that you are now trying to fulfill a role that is not your role because you forget that you didn't design yourself. And when you understand you have designed yourself, you start to ask role question of the designer so that you have a better understanding of what your role is to be. So if our men start with the humbling thought, I didn't make myself, God made me.
Mhm.
I didn't design myself. God
Amen.
designed me. And God
Likeness.
designed others like me. And God designed me in a particular way. So if God designed me, the purpose question is, why did he design me? Why did he design me different from the woman? And why did he design me the way I was designed? In other words, what does he intend for me to accomplish by his design? And then you start to realize, but wait, you realize that there's something noble about what God's intention is for us. That God designed us to be a part of something so much bigger where we are functioning in harmony with him. So we are designed for relationship with God. We are designed to live to please and honor God. And you know, however secularized you function, if you take away the designer, then you're taking away a deep sense of purpose, because the
Correct.
problem is, my brother, if our men think my purpose is not something supernatural, bigger than me, divine, then what is my purpose? To become a millionaire, to become a trillionaire? And then I realize that if that is my purpose, then it doesn't matter what I do in the process. I could have 10 women and 100 children. And if they are all women who are successful and they may motivate me, then they will enable me to accomplish my purpose, which is to be a millionaire. So if we don't have a sense of purpose that is bigger than us, that is God-based, we have a crisis. And I think when my brother goes into the prisons, when you, as he spoke of, when you listen to a lot of the fellows, even if they say they believe in God and so, you realize that there's a deficiency in the clarity of this sense of, I am not here for myself. I'm not even here for my family. I'm here for God. And if I understand I'm here for God, then I understand my role in the family towards that which God created me
Great
for.
purpose.
I don't know how we could get away from it. If if if
Mhm.
if you have a car, it doesn't matter how expensive the car is. If you don't understand why the car is created, purpose, you could have the most expensive car in the world, and you have the car selling mangoes on top of it, or using it for decoration in your yard, and people saying, how on earth you have an expensive car like that and you don't drive it? Is a car is for being driven? Well, talk to the maker, they'll tell you cars were made to be driven and are designed to be driven in a certain way. So if you really want the car's purpose to be fulfilled, you gotta consult the maker. There's no getting
Right.
around it.
Amen.
Gotcha. So, Barney has something to add?
No, a
Okay.
resounding
So,
amen to
so
that.
then, so then, from what I hear you all saying, then is that the consequence of confusion can lead to some serious things too. Like, for example, no wonder men could be burnt out. You know, they
Mhm.
start to feel like doing all the time, the body and appreciating me. I ain't getting what it's supposed to get. And so they develop resentment. So we can see how not understanding the rules can definitely not only affect how the children are raised, but
Mhm.
affect the marriages and
Mhm.
affect how husbands deal with their wives and things of that nature.
Correct.
Correct.
Right. So I think
Because remember,
we can stop. Go ahead.
just remember, if you have a very expensive car, extremely expensive car, and you decide that you're going to try to use the car as a backhoe to dig holes and so forth, and the car not digging the hole, and you're trying to angle the car the right way, and you're skidding the tire, and you're trying everything to get the car to dig some holes for you, and help you with your farming. But the car just not helping you with the farming. What would happen? You're gonna get frustrated. You're going to be, in fact, you start to be resentful because the car just not doing what it's supposed to do, because the problem is not the car. The problem is you have not taken time to understand what the purpose, what the creator's intention was. And so you're right. So a lot of our fellas, they work, some of them working hard, but they don't have a
Right
sense of
on.
purpose. So they're getting frustrated. A
Yeah.
lot of fellas in having to work hard in their marriage. Why I have to work hard on my marriage? Why when I come home, I'm supposed to just be able to relax and life should be easy? And I said to one fellow, I said, so you're willing to work hard for a boss and to make money out there, but you're not willing to work hard for your wife and your family because somehow you have this illusion that I should come home and everything should just be nice and smooth and I should be able to fold my hand and my wife rub me head and we good. I'm not willing to work hard because you don't understand
Done.
the purpose.
So true. So true. And if I could speak to it too in terms of being a family life counselor, there are so many instances where we would use some of what you spoke about and the precipitating factors of all of those things. The concept where they think this is what they're supposed to be doing and this is how they ought to be treated, right? And therein lies a lot of the confusion and stuff. But not only that, but here's the static I think that is added to it. Because there is no clear and defined role that has been set, we as people of faith can agree that we understand why we were built, who built us, and what's our purpose. But when we look outside, when we look at what's going on in the world itself, there's so much distraction, there's so much noise, there's so much opinions of it. And I think therein lies a lot of what's going on. So I think what's contributing is the world preview of what the expectation of a man should be. And if I use the term of the Joneses, a lot of people are caught up in that, especially where we are now. We have moved from the generation where I could talk about my father growing up, and he would have had to fill water by a standpipe, feed cows, feed the pig, tie out the animal, and stuff like that. And then we move into a generation where they don't know about that. We have so much that has changed between, let's say, 2 to 3 generations. And within that generational transcending and growing and developing, there are some things that were skipped as to what's the role and the purpose. So when the faith element in terms of us as people of God not really clearly speaking up, showing and even modeling. And I think one of the best ways for men to understand role and purpose is by actually seeing it modeled. We are a product of the environment we grew up in. And that's one of the things. A lot of the environments that we have been exposed to or grew up in, there is nothing that exemplifies what is correct, what is the right way of the role and purpose. So they took that, let's say Bentley, and they took the Bentley and they tried to use the Bentley as a backhoe. And it just didn't work. It just didn't work. So I think this is where we need to kind of hit a reset. And I'm thankful for the conversation that we can have out here on the World Wide Web where Family Fest Barbados is putting on, because I think there must be a reset for the mindset of men and women to understand the clear purpose, role, and purpose of a man. And I think once we start kind of building back and reinforcing that footing and living it out, we could start seeing a change in what's going on in the culture of our society right now. And I think we really need men who are courageous, who are bold, who are willing to do it God's way. And I think that's the statement, doing it God's way. Because a lot of us have tried doing things our way, and we realize we've been using a Bentley to do a backhoe's job.
Well, and with your permission, Brother Mark, there, well, you're muted, but I noticed you did say okay.
Yes,
The
please, go ahead.
the challenge is, Brother Marlon, what I find worrying now is that a man has a Bentley and trying to use it as a backhoe, and other people watching him trying to dig down a bank with the Bentley. And other people are trying to give him direction to say, boy, no, this is how you gotta use the Bentley to dig down the backhoe. And it's amazing how the amount of people who will now be surrounding him, trying to help to use the Bentley to dig down a backhoe. And you're not getting persons who are saying, but big man, that's not what a Bentley was created for. In fact, everybody trying to figure out with him how to use the Bentley to dig down a backhoe. And so you have a society where there's a collective folly of persons trying to use Bentleys to dig down backhoes. And so even in terms of men and the understanding of purpose, because we're not connecting our sense of purpose in God, because we somehow have felt that, because people have resented religion and practice of religion and failures of religion, they forget that it doesn't matter how upset you are with religion, it doesn't change fundamental truths about who we are and how we are created. So when you have our disconnect from our manufacture, when you have our disconnect from our manufacture, then you reinvent, you create, you invent a different purpose because you now don't know how to use this thing right. So we have heard, I'm sure, with the brethren, one of the pervasive, misguided things we hear now of our men, even though they don't articulate it and package it this way, but a lot of our men really think that their purpose is to generate wealth, that is what they are to live for, to generate. And sadly, sometimes even in church, we mislead into that idea that or the
Mhm.
end all and be all of life and what the man must be about is to generate wealth. So women will tell you if the man can't generate wealth, he's no good man. The man stays away from church because his goal is to generate wealth. His dream is to generate wealth. And then you have people like Elon Musk making being the first trillionaire, so that becomes aspirational. That's what I am here to do. I am here to become the next trillionaire. I'm here to become. And then we realize that, okay, is that what you're created for? And so you have a man who is not getting ahead materially. He's not making a lot of money, and he feels like a waste. No, he could
Yes,
be the most present, the most supportive,
committed.
most
Yeah.
guiding, the most everything fellow in the family. But somehow he cannot provide the luxuries for the family. The wife can't get the amount of hairstyle she wants, and the children can't get all the latest crocs. And it ain't matter how loving, how supportive, how godly, how guiding he is, he feels like a waste. He feels like he's not fulfilling purpose because somewhere along the line, he thinks that his primary purpose is wealth generation.
Wonderful. So now that we understand, we have a clear understanding as to the differences and how, the confusion of the role and the purpose can cause issues. But how can men be more intentional when it comes now to navigating these two dynamics, role and purpose? How can they be, pay more attention and be more intentional towards dealing with these two dynamics? Brother Marlon, you want to go first?
Yeah, if I may, back to the owner, DJ Nicholas have a song
Mhm.
singing back to
Yes,
the owner. That's it.
yes.
I
Yes.
would say we need to go back to the designer. We were
Mhm.
created in God's image and in his likeness. And that's it. Bottom line foundation. When we build in Barbados here, what do? We dig to what? Rock, right?
Hmm.
We got to
Hmm.
go back to the foundation. So to avoid us abusing the body, the mind, the will, the emotion that we have in this vessel, we need to totally understand why was this vessel created, because we do see many men in particular really focus on the external. And my thing is, and especially when you talk to young men, a lot of young men, when you ask them, so what do you want to be? What will you, some of them, they want to be a professional cricketer, they want to be a professional footballer, they want to be a professional athlete. Those are some of the ambitious ones. And then I ask the question, if you have an injury early in your season of
Hmm.
starting, what next? What will you do next? Now that will never happen to me, but life happens. I remember there's a
Hmm.
motivational speaker right now, Iki Johnson, moved all over the US, and he would have been a football player, and he got injured and lost all of the mobility in his arm, and he can't play football, everything that he was living for. And he now had to then pivot and do something else. He now has become a man of faith and a motivational speaker, but he found purpose. But the thing about it, he could have had that from the beginning and not looked for it in football. And I think we as men have to truly go back to our creator. The word of God tells us Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, but it says, trust in the Lord with all our hearts. It says, lean not unto our own understanding. And that's what I think most of us do. We try to work things out for ourselves. We do not try to go back to the owner. We don't try to read him. I use this analogy. I said, look at this thing. Look at a phone. Look at a cell phone. There are many people who don't even read the manual. There are many people who would use devices and they just put on the on button and expect these things. A lot of us haven't even explored some apps that are there within a device to really make it function better and even work better. Why? We don't read the manual. There are so many of us do not read our Bibles. We tend to listen to what is out there, but we really don't go back to the basic. The basic is understanding what has God really outlined for us as men to do in this world, why were we created. And I think we have to stop the shortcuts. We got to slow down and we need to go back to basic. The basic is in the Word of God. The Word of God is life. It is light. It is our solid rock. It's our foundation to which we can build a life. Because if we could develop a relationship, I think all God has been doing throughout humanity, throughout creation, is to build back that connection. When he came back, he was looking for Adam, but Adam was hiding. Why Adam was hiding? He did something wrong. And it's because of that sinful nature, I think we keep avoiding that connection. We think we need to be perfect. God just wants us to connect, just connect back with him. And I think when that connection is really redeveloped and that's there, when we understand by the originator, when we do that update, because listen, these phones calls for constant updating. And when we update or upgrade to that OS or that operating system, that God operating system, there is total clarity and understanding, vision, perspective of our role and clearly what's our purpose here. So we're not chasing paper. We're not chasing the next good thing. We actually chasing the real purpose of this thing called life. Because when we look at it, we need more men who are purpose driven, clarity in understanding their role, because society has so many things to confuse them out there. And if we really need to get men to go back, we got to come with the truth. Not only with the truth, we got to come with the power of God. Because if we need to transform life, when Christ walked the earth, he walked the earth and he did it through the demonstration of the power of God in and through his life. So if I have to say that, Mark, we need to just get back to the owner, back to the foundation so we could understand role, we could understand purpose. I think my life changed the day I understand why I was placed here. So you don't have to pay me to do what God has given me. This is my purpose. When I understand great men, when we talk about, we let's talk about men like Nelson Mandela. I would use him on a loosely secular context. They didn't have to pay him. He was passionate about something. He was willing to die for something. Martin Luther King, he was willing to die for something. And what these men were willing to die for, the purpose they understood, that's what made the difference. That's the difference maker. And if we have more men understanding their role, they're understanding their purpose, we'd have more people making a significant difference in this world. You talk about Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk is doing some phenomenal thing. He's using the same God creative ability. God created mankind, created him. And he's using the ability to launch rockets and bring them back down, right? He is coordinating people, investing in businesses. So imagine if all of us tap into our God likeness, what this world would be like.
Okay. Any comments on that, Rev Adolphus?
Yeah, I think back to the owner, DJ Nicholas. I think look, you can try and skirt around it as much as you want, I don't think we have any better advice to our men in terms of how we can help them to be more intentional in fulfilling their roles, etc., except to really go back to the owner. The any alternative advice would be perhaps just as detrimental and harmful, And I think of Solomon, wisest man apart from Jesus. We don't normally remind ourselves, but the wisest leader for a season. Solomon said, God, I want wisdom to lead. And, he thought his primary purpose was to lead. And he started out leading well. And then he started running behind a multitude of women. And before you knew it, what happened? Solomon, who started out connected to God, asking God for wisdom to lead, started to become disconnected from God. And that disconnect from God was the demise of Solomon and his kingdom. So when our men are disconnected from the source of their identity, source of their purpose, their reason, they're not going to function effectively as fathers. They're not going to function effectively as society, as leaders, or whatever role they have in society. It really boils down to them reconnecting with God. And what is key is that I don't think we understand that in this natural world, there's this fundamental spiritual conflict that is instructive. Because from day one even to Jesus's life, when we read of this devil Satan, it's interesting that when Satan confronts Jesus, if you are the Son of God, and then you realize that Satan's deliberate effort was to see how he could disconnect Jesus from God, because he knew the more you are disconnected from the Creator, the Father, the Maker, from God, he knows you may still do great things, but your sense of purpose and what you may be able to accomplish, as great as it will be, it may be greatly destructive rather than greatly constructive. And I think, however else we want to help our men, it has to be unapologetically. Say, big man, you gotta go back to the owner. And there's a humility that requires. That, and if you are to play a footballer, be a footballer, you can't fulfill your role if you're not humble, if you're not willing to recognize that it's not me alone. I'm not the only player. I have to play with others. And there's a humility that requires. That if you have a Bentley and you're trying to use it as a Baku, there's a humility that is required for you to say, but wait, I can't use the Bentley as a Baku. I have to figure out what the Bentley is made for. And if I was trying to use it as a Baku, I'm wrong. And let me go back to the owner and figure out how best to work this Bentley. And then you start to read the manual, the Bible, and you figure out the Bentley has some amazing features. And so the Bentley may not be able to move the lump of dirt or move the rock, but the Bentley may be able to transport all the people who are supposed to move the rock. So we gotta go back to the owner, and that is the thing that hurts me, because I see a development in our society and among our men of a certain kind of arrogance, a certain kind of pride that disconnects us from our Creator and therefore disconnects us from our purpose. And we want our men to be humbled enough to be able to humble themselves before God. And when they humble themselves before God, it brings to them a sense of clarity. And you're now in a better position to learn, to receive, to be redirected, so you can understand now your purpose and then be able to fulfill your role towards that purpose.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for your thoughts and helping us in this discussion, recovering manhood, role versus purpose. I want to thank you, Reverend Adolph Davis and Brother Marlon Charles, for your efforts here this afternoon. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where we, for this particular event, Rediscovering Manhood, Role versus Purpose, this is where we end this evening. And we encourage you to check out the Facebook where Family Fest on, yes, so that you can participate in the other events that we have planned for you 2026. So until we connect again at some later stage, my name is Mark Hayward, and we want to wish you a very good evening. May God bless you and keep you, and may his face continue to shine upon you, and may you truly experience his peace. Shalom.